Welcome to Healthy Frontiers. My name is Dr. Bizzoni, and this show is dedicated to the education of our viewers. The topic for tonight is a really great one: diabetes, weight loss, and degenerative disease. My special guest is John Wienecke. John is the CEO and founder of Winning Dynamics, which is a personal and team coaching organization for the development of self-actualization and leadership. He has over 30 years of experience in product development using computer software technology for Fortune 100 companies. John also has 40 years of personal development experience and is certified as an integral master coach. Leadership skills are essential for living life powerfully, and John's organization tailors programs to develop advanced leadership skills for individuals and teams. Again, today's topic: diabetes, weight loss, and degenerative disease. Welcome, John.
Nice to be here.
Great to have you on the show. John, let's talk. All
Okay,
right, here we go.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what does leadership have to do with diabetes, weight loss, and degenerative disease?
We live at unique times. So that before, things were very different. But today, all the information is available on the internet, but it's all not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for us to live powerful, we actually have to determine what's real and what's not real. And what's happening today in our health is not really working. Diseases are getting more rampant, diabetes is growing. My father died of diabetes. So for people to really sort that out and make their own choices, they need to have leadership skills in their personal life, leadership skills in their family, leadership skills in their community, and of course leadership in their business.
Right. Great. So what is your perspective on wellness, given your background, John?
Well, one of the things I've learned, my first wife died of cancer, and I went through a very powerful time during that process. Mm-hmm. And one of the things if you take a look at nature, it's really it's always living and always recovers very well. And our bodies do the same thing. And if we're not living well, then there's something we're getting in the way of doing that. And so what I've found is that if you allow your body to actually heal, if you put it in a place of healing, it will heal. But we don't really do that too well. But we do have the knowledge today to actually figure it out. And hopefully today we'll give some insights on that for other people and what I found in my journey.
Great, great. So why did you personally get involved in wellness and health, John?
Well, my first wife was given 3 to 6 weeks to live one day in Sloan Kettering. And it was a challenging time. And at the same time, it was clear that she said, well, they don't really know who I am. Mm-hmm. They're just doing based on best information that they have. Right. And so 3 weeks came and went, and 6 weeks came and went.
Sure.
And she ended up living 13 months. And in those 13 months, there was more. She actually healed in a very real way. And subsequent to that, I found out that we don't need cancer is something that can be prevented. That if our body's in a particular state, it's difficult for cancer to actually progress. I didn't know exactly that information. Later on, my father had diabetes, and he struggled with that. Even though he lived long, the quality of his life wasn't the same with having diabetes. And now today, I know, based on what we'll talk about today, that diabetes is reversible, type 2 diabetes. Right. And so what we don't do, and why I'm really passionate about it, is that one, we want to live well. And by living well, we have to take different action. We need to help it out. And because we're not aware, we don't have the knowledge, that prevents us from doing the right thing. But if we do the right thing, the quality of our lives can drastically improve. And healing, whether it be coaching, whether it be anxiety, this is all an inside-out game. So to live powerfully, you have to understand who we are and develop that understanding of that.
So you told me that you have made a major change last year.
Yes.
All right. What was that change, or what led you to making that change?
Okay. So it was really interesting. On my birthday in June, my son gives me a ketogenic cookbook. Okay. Oh, what's that? I don't know what that is, right?
All right, sure.
So of course I'm going to start to investigate that, right? Yeah. So I started investigating that, and I come to realize, first off, I knew that I had to make a change. Doctors want to put me on statins for high cholesterol. Right. My triglycerides were going up. My weight was starting to go up, which had never gone up really. not much anyway.
Right.
And so I knew I had to make a change. Now my son prevents me with this book.
Sure.
So I look at what is ketogenic. So when I started doing the research, the question is, where do you do the research? Because there's research that's biased and others that is not.
Sure.
So I found this guy who was he was a scientist in North Carolina, and he was commissioned by the military for the SEALs do underwater stealth types of activities.
Right.
And they were having issues with seizures. And he was given a grant to actually figure that out.
Yes.
And he led him to an understanding that since the 1920s, children that had not episode, but had seizures were given this diet, got on this diet called ketogenic, and they went away.
Right.
And he was able to create extraneous ketones, which is the byproduct of fat.
Right.
And the SEALs problem went away. So when I started to investigate that, it led me to understand that our body can actually burn two types of energy. One is based on glucose, mostly from carbs and sugars.
Right.
And the other is from fats. And that was really interesting. And what was really revealing is that the diseases like cancer, which used to be considered to be based on our genetics, really is actually a metabolic disease. It's how we burn energy. And so I found out that cancer, diabetes, and even dementia and Alzheimer's have an impact like that. And I was clear after being with my father as he was getting older, going into homes out of the hospital after he went through just to recover.
Right.
And his sister was in a home.
Yep.
You walk around a home and you do not want to have those types of diseases.
Right.
So I said, for my own health and for if I can prevent dementia and Alzheimer's, I'm going to change.
Right, for sure. Yep. So there's so many conflicting statements about what is good for you and what is not good for you. From a leadership perspective, how do you sort through all the information to determine what is valid and really what is not?
Well, that's the key of our time. See, a lot of the information we have today actually was gotten many years ago.
Right.
So the example being is Ansel Keys, who was the person that actually created that said saturated fat was bad, is now, today in the 1950s when that was occurring and heart disease was on the rise, there was a big desire to actually resolve that problem.
Sure.
And when he came up with that conclusion, people accepted it.
Yes.
But subsequent to that, now we have the science to actually look at that and see if it's true. And then we find out that he didn't actually use science to come up with that. He used correlation to do that. And so he picked the countries that correlated to the facts that he wanted. But there was other countries that didn't correlate that way.
Right.
So, and then he got onto the American Heart Association and he created the food pyramid.
Right.
And so that's what's been going on. And then you have the food industry jump all over that. And you know that 80% of the food that's in in the supermarket today is sugar-based. And there's three basic food that makes up most of what we eat in the American diet. One is soy, one is corn, and one is grain.
Right.
And that's not what the new doctors are not recommending that anymore.
Right. Got it. So, okay, what is your experience, or what has been your experience being on this low-carb, high-fat diet? Now, so you've been doing this for years now.
No, I've been doing it since June.
Oh, since June?
So my son gave me the cookbook.
Right. Okay.
That's when I said, I did the research he gave it to me in the beginning of June, my birthday.
Yep.
The end of June, it took me a little while to do the research.
Got it.
At the end of June, I said, you know something? This is worth to try out.
Right.
And that's what's really important today with our facts, is that we can try things out and validate it for ourselves.
Right.
So when I did it, the part that was really interesting was that what I found out is that our hormones that control our hunger and stuff like that get insensitive, just like insulin insensitivity.
Yes.
It's basically we don't respond to them. And the first thing that really the biggest change is that my cravings for food went away. I would eat, be satiated, and not be hungry.
Right.
And know what the real test was when there would be a table worth of chocolate chip cookies,
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't walk by. Chocolate's my thing, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't walk by one without
Right.
taking 2 or 3, 4,
Right.
5, maybe 6.
Yeah.
I walked through them and didn't take them.
Right. There you go.
And that was really astonishing when my desire to eat was no longer there after I ate a really good meal.
Right.
And then about in October, so it's 4 or 5 months later, I then got tested, blood tests. 'Cause I'm always about science, about the metrics. How do you validate results?
Right.
So I got my blood tests,
Yes.
and my triglycerides went down over 100 points.
Wow. There
My
you go.
cholesterol went down 94 points.
Okay.
SGBT, which is a measure of liver stress,
Yes.
went from above where it's under stress to below stress.
Right.
And that was my biggest, most proud of that number, because if your liver is not in stress, that takes care of most of your cleaning out your system and stuff like that.
Right.
That was really important. So I knew I was doing the right thing.
Right.
And and it's really satisfying. The food is really tastes good. It's really not hard for me to do it. I'm not a cook, but
Right.
I can follow a recipe.
Yeah, right.
So I get a recipe,
Yeah.
I cook it, and guess what? My family loves it. My friends love it. So like I'm not even a good cook, but if I follow their directions, the food tastes great.
Right. So ketogenic, just for a moment, let's take an aside. What is ketogenic? What does that mean?
Well, ketogenic.
So the audience understands.
Yeah, so ketogenic, so we can burn either glucose or we can burn ketones.
Right.
Glucose is generated by carbs. Ketones is generated by fat.
Right.
And so, and there's something called ADP, and our mitochondria in our cells produce that, and they can use 1 or 2 sources for that. But cancer can only use glucose, and it's very inefficient. So in a normal cell, when there's oxygen, it produces energy in a very efficient manner using glucose.
Right.
But it has an alternative, which is not very efficient. And cancer uses only the inefficient method, even if there's oxygen present. And when it's not efficient, it also produces acid condition.
Right.
And it creates inflammation. And that's a big problem. Inflammation is one of the biggest problems that we have.
Right.
Like cholesterol is not really a problem because it's needed for healing. But when there's a certain inflammation and it doesn't form right,
Correct.
so because what it forms is a way to pass it through the cells. If
Yes.
that's not formed correctly, that's when it sticks to your veins.
Arteries and
arteries.
yeah, that's
and
right.
stuff. So it's really the inflammation that really causes the problem, not cholesterol itself.
Got it.
And so ketones also is very good for the brain. One of the things that was another astonishing result that I had was that when you eat this way, you have mental clarity. So you're clear. You don't go through, a very easy time like Thanksgiving after you eat, you feel like people are knocked out, they sleep.
Sure.
You don't have those downs because the fat is more dense. And so when it burns, it's a cleaner burning fuel. And so it's even.
Right.
And that's a big difference between ketones and glucose.
Got it.
And since your cells can do either, it's like converting from diesel to propane.
Right.
I just chose to switch.
There you go. Perfect. Good. So some people recommend the fasting associated with this diet. Have you done any fasting?
Would you believe it that a doctor, when I did the research, there was a doctor heart doctor down in Texas called the Plantation Project. And he was a set of doctors that have moved away from actually giving medicine, because medicine they found was actually just deals with the symptoms.
Right.
And so, like an example, type 2 diabetes, when you take, I know that because my father, you take type 2 diabetes, you take insulin, and that pushes the insulin out of your bloodstream. But that's not really dealing with the source of the problem.
Right. You need to get to the cause.
So what happens is that the Diabetes Association says that type 2 diabetes is a progressive degenerative disease. But that's because the solution that we apply doesn't deal with the problem.
Right. Get to the cause of the problem.
Right. So So the doctor down in
Texas.
Texas,
Yeah.
he gave me an analogy. If you have a wound on your hand, and every day you hit it, will it heal? No, it keeps opening up.
Right.
He goes, well, when we eat the way we eat,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. We never allow it to heal. So what happens, two things happen, is that when you do fasting,
Yeah.
two things. If you're already fat adapted, that you're burning ketones, two things occur. Number one, it cleans your body. Your liver starts to have rest, and it's a healing process.
Right.
And if you go back to when we were, ancient times, and they were cavemen and stuff like that, they didn't always eat all the time. So they went through natural fasting. And the other part of it is when you're fat adapted and you are a little bit heavy, which most of us are,
Right.
your body automatically takes the fuel that it needs. And so you lose weight because it's burning fat.
Right.
And so I've gone on 84 hours is the longest I went. But a lot of times I was doing 60-hour fasts. And I feel great. I mean, the first day is the toughest.
Right.
Because you got the craving and stuff. And then I also found out that at 4 o'clock in the morning you produce glucose just because you're getting ready for the day. And so
right.
you learn that stuff. But once you learn it and you can just be with it, it comes and goes.
Right. Right. Great. So if people wanted to try out your approach, what do you recommend?
Well, one thing is to really just stop eating the processed food.
Right.
Right? That's the easiest thing. There's a lot of processed food that we eat, the breads, the pastas, like that. Eat things that are actually plant-based or something you can actually see. Even eating meat and stuff, that's fine too. It's real food. So it's really to eat real food. And there is a couple places like the Diet Doctor, some places that have some recipes, and it's very easy to try one. Try one, taste it, see what it's like.
Yeah.
And if you stop eating the processed food and you eat a few of these diets, you see it's not really that hard.
Right.
And then there's actually on my website, I actually have something I will talk about in a minute that is a little protocol you can actually follow.
Okay.
But if you just really want to get started, it's really just, number one, slowly stop eating the processed food.
Right. Right. Sugars and all.
Sugars.
So bad.
Take a look at what you're eating, but make it look like it's real food. So if it's coming out of the garden, it's meat products, preferably organic, it's a lot better.
You know what? I just read something myself. I'll just put this in there. That from a reputable magazine that said that the average American eats 35 5-pound bags of sugar every year. 35 bags. I mean, on average.
Right.
So that's insane. Right.
So one of the things I recently heard is that they talk about macronutrients, which we all know is carbs, proteins, and fats.
Yep.
The other one is water. Someone said that was actually
that?
4. So that is water.
I like that.
And so definitely get rid of the sugars. I mean, all the fruit drinks we drink loaded with sugar, and it's added sugar.
Yeah, for sure. So, what should people be taking away from this discussion? Besides anything else?
Well, what they should really be taking away is that the power that they have is enormous, and they don't underestimate that power. And if they start, first off, the first thing they should take away is that they can change their health. That if they change the way they eat and they change their lifestyle, they can have an impact in their health. Right. And while we have doctors and they're useful, we need to really distinguish between what's a short-term solution and whether what they're doing is just a localized thing to get us through a particular thing versus something that's long-term. Like taking insulin for type 2 diabetes is not curing anything.
Right.
So if you keep taking it and you're not doing anything about it, then you're going to get worse. Right? So you've got to start to take your health in your own hands. And the other thing is, if we want to make an impact, we vote every day. We vote it with our dollars.
Right.
If we didn't like and we got angry at, say, Facebook for the recent issue they had, and we stopped purchasing or working with Facebook, they would either have to change their business or they'd go out of business.
Right.
So we have an enormous amount of power to actually take a look. And we have to also know that the food industry is not our friend.
Right.
While it makes food cheap, it also makes them profitable. And are they doing that at a cost? If you think about young kids, and they're doing advertisements around this really, cereal that has all the sugar in it and stuff like that. And I watched a movie about a kid that was obese and trying to solve that problem. And he followed what people told him. And, they say, well, if you exercise more and you eat less, then you'll take care of yourself. And you can't do it, it's on you. But that's not true. See, the thing is, if you're eating empty food, if we're telling them to eat some of the things that they eat, and it's empty, then their desire to eat is generated because their body doesn't have what it needs.
Right.
So exercise alone, while it helps, the diet is so important. And if we have them eat the wrong things, they're never going to be successful. Right. And so it's really up to that.
So another question, John. So how young would you say a ketogenic diet person could start utilizing that? I mean, if you have an overweight adolescent, is that okay for them to start?
Well, they've been using ketogenic diet for kids that had seizures since 1920s.
Okay.
So
young kids.
Yes. So it has worked with them. And the other thing I found out is that because it's generational now, we've been doing this for since the 50s.
Yeah.
That kids are coming out already predisposed to obesity because their mother has been eating that way for their whole 9 months.
Right.
So that's how come we're doing it generationally.
Yeah.
And it's not because people are doing it because they're bad. They just don't know.
Yeah.
So young people thrive on eating well.
Great. So, John, just to wind up here now, so where can people find more information about the ketogenic diet and living more healthy?
Okay. On my website, winningdynamics.com, there's something called Perspectives. There's a thing on health. All my research is there. Dietdoctor.com has an enormous amount of information, recipes. It's a great place to go to find out more. And so those two places are really good. You do ketogenics, there's a lot of information. But if you go to my website, at least it's been consolidated. There's videos from doctors letting them know their perspective on it, how to start. It's all there on the website.
Perfect. John, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And I want to thank our audience for being so attentive, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.